Back to the basics. Sunglasses, check. Hat, check. Notes, check. Pepsi, check. Sources, check. And thick skin, check. Let's go! Wow, we are almost to 10,000 subscribers. We are very, very close. So we greatly appreciate you hitting that like and subscribe button to help get us there. To be honest with you, I'm blown away. This has been so much fun doing this channel. But today I want to talk about the Big 12 possibly bluffing us this whole time. Whenever the news came out that USC and UCLA was headed to the Big Ten, a lot of rumors got started. Yours truly jumped on those rumors, and I made some videos, a lot of videos about those rumors and conference realignment news. Part of that news was the Big 12 was going after some teams out of the Pac-12. We heard that Arizona and Colorado for sure put their application into the Big 12, and the Big 12 was expected to accept them. First, we heard within the first couple weeks after USC and UCLA announced they were going to the Big Ten. And then we heard August 1st because that was the first official day of Brett Yormark as the commissioner of the Big 12. And then we heard August 4th. Well, each and every single one of those deadlines came and they passed, and no news. The Big 12 has not added anybody as of right now. Has the Big 12 been bluffing us this whole time? What kind of game is the Big 12 playing? There are some valuable brands still left in the Pac-12 that the Big 12 could grab. Top two brands, of course. Number one, Washington. No, it's not Oregon. The number one brand left in the Pac-12 is Washington. They have a bigger fan base, they have a bigger alumni base, they bring in more revenue, and their brand is just bigger than Oregon's. Oregon is the number two brand, however. It's a good brand, it's a strong brand. I was not trash talking Oregon when I said that Washington's brand was bigger. It's just facts. Might surprise a few people, but Washington's brand is better than Oregon's. So those are the top two brands. Those would be the brands that the Big 12 would want the most. We heard that Washington and Oregon put their application into the Big 10, but they were flat out denied, turned down. So it seemed logical that Washington and Oregon could join the Big 12. I mean, that's better than staying on a sinking ship, right? TV numbers were announced as far as revenue. The teams in the Pac-12 wasn't great, just like we thought. And Oregon and Washington wanted a bigger share. They wanted a 16.5% share, which would give them $44 million a year apiece. And then Cal and Stanford said that they wanted 13.5%, which would give them around $33 million a year per team. So the rest of the Pac-12 would have been screwed under that scenario. I don't know if that's what they're going with in order to keep Oregon and Washington. That's what they're asking for. So if Washington and Oregon doesn't stay in the Pac-12 and the Big Ten has turned them down, wouldn't the Big 12 be the most logical choice? You would think so, but we haven't heard any type of developments on that front. Let's go back to the Arizona and Colorado situation. From what I've heard, they have put their applications into the Big 12, and they were expected to be accepted within a short amount of time, especially by now. It should have been a done deal. So why hasn't it been announced that Arizona and Colorado have been accepted to the Big 12? Has the Big 12 changed their mind? Did it not even happen? Did Arizona and Colorado not put their application into the Big 12? Was that just a big bluff by the Big 12? But there's some other teams in the Pac-12 that the Big 12 could grab. So I wanted to list the teams in order of importance as far as the Big 12 pursuing these teams. I already mentioned number one, Washington. They have the biggest brand by far. A solid number two would be Oregon. They do have a really good brand, a big brand, just not quite as big as Washington. And they have Nike as a backer. And Phil Knight, the founder and president of Nike, wants Oregon in the Big Ten. He has come out publicly and said that he wants Oregon in the Big Ten. Whether that actually happens, I don't know. Number three would be Utah. I think Utah has the third most valuable brand in the Pac-12 right now. I think Utah would fit in perfectly with the Big 12, especially with the Big 12 already having BYU. You would absolutely own the Holy War. That's a big-time revenue maker right there. And Utah has a pretty big fan base. Remember, it wasn't too long ago where Utah was a Group of 5 team. They've had tremendous success in the Pac-12 since they become a Power 5 team. Number four is where I have Arizona. They've fallen on hard times when it comes to football. They have a great basketball brand, and they can be good in football. Right now, a little down, but I think they are the fourth most valuable brand worth pursuing by the Big 12. Number five, right behind Arizona, is Arizona State. Definitely worth pursuing. Hey, if you could grab Arizona and Arizona State, you lock down that Phoenix market. You have a solid footprint in the state of Arizona. Makes a ton of sense for the Big 12 to grab those two teams together. Number six is where I have Stanford. A lot of people wonder why I would have Stanford so low on the list. This is as it relates to the Big 12. Overall, I think Stanford is a better brand than, say, a Utah and Arizona State. But as it relates to the Big 12, I have them at number 6. Still worth pursuing, although I think the Big Ten might try to grab Stanford to entice Notre Dame. Number 7, Colorado. Colorado actually left the Big 12, went to the Pac-12. Maybe they're realizing they made a big-time mistake. They would have to swallow their pride to come back to the Big 12. but I think they are worth pursuing. And number 8, finally, Cal. Just to have a footprint in the state of California makes Cal worth pursuing, so I have them on the list. The 2 teams that I do not have on the list that I think the Big 12 should not pursue at all is Washington State and Oregon State, unless they came in as a package with either Washington and Oregon. Otherwise, don't worry about it. So all the deadlines have come and all the deadlines have gone, and still we haven't heard any new announcements as far as the Big 12 adding any new members. Does that mean that they were bluffing this whole time? Or does that mean that they were serious? It's just that things have changed. Has the Big 12 now turned their attention to the ACC? Well, now we also know that the Big Ten and the SEC are interested in teams in the ACC. The first 4 teams mentioned for the SEC was North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, and Virginia. We also know that the Big Ten has some interest in the ACC as well. They could be interested in the Virginia schools, Virginia and Virginia Tech. They could be interested in North Carolina. I've heard they could be interested in Miami or a Georgia Tech or a Pitt or a Syracuse. Several options for the Big Ten as well. The magic number to break those grant of rights for the ACC, 8 teams. So if the Big Ten and the SEC go in together and get 4 teams apiece, that would be 8 teams. Boom, you break those grant of rights, and that leaves the rest of the teams open for pickings as well. Maybe the Big 12 knows that. Maybe the Big 12 knows the plans of the SEC and the Big Ten, and they're like, oh, we're going to hold off on the teams in the Pac-12. We're a little West heavy already. Maybe we should shift our focus to the East and help out our East teams like West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF. Because once those grant of rights are broken, the Big 12 could absolutely go into the ACC and get some leftovers. Teams like a Louisville, that would be a great brand for the Big 12, and it would make a lot of sense. It would help out West Virginia and Cincinnati for sure. They could look at a Pitt. I mean, the backyard brawl. What more could you want as far as rivalries go? You could get a Pitt. That would be great. Maybe a Syracuse. Maybe a Georgia Tech. Maybe if Miami keeps getting looked over, Miami could go to the Big 12 as well. So you see what I'm saying? Maybe they're holding off on the Pac-12. Maybe in the future we'll still grab some Pac-12 teams. But man, we're interested to see what's going over here in the ACC with the SEC and the Big Ten trying to grab some teams and maybe break those grant of rights. And boom, that opens the door for us, and we can get brands out of the ACC as well and help our teams on the East side. Because the Big 12, they also don't want to lose teams. So they need to pad that East side so that those teams are satisfied. So here's the list of the teams in the ACC that the Big 12 should pursue. First off, the teams that are going to be off the board, they're not going to be a choice. Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Notre Dame. Those brands 100% will be off the board if the SEC and the Big Ten do in fact raid the ACC and get the grant of rights broken. And there's 2 solid no's. 2 teams that the Big 12 should absolutely not pursue. Don't pursue Boston College and don't pursue Wake Forest. They bring no value. So number 1 would be Miami, and that's if the Big Ten or the SEC don't grab Miami. I don't have Miami as a lock for the SEC or the Big Ten to grab, but they could be potentially a pick for either one of those conferences. So if they are not picked, the Big 12 needs to grab Miami first. After Miami, there's Louisville. I think the Big 12 should grab Louisville, and that's if the SEC or the Big 10 don't grab them either. I think Louisville is a great brand, and I think they would add a lot of value on that east side, especially having Cincinnati and West Virginia. That's a great trifecta right there. The next team on the list would be Pitt, of course. Backyard brawl. You have to get the backyard brawl. And I don't think the Big 10 or the SEC would grab Pitt, and that would be a great pickup for the Big 12. You bring in Louisville and Pitt, your east side is much stronger right off the bat just by getting those 2 teams. The next team that they should go after would be NC State, and that's if the SEC or the Big 10 don't grab NC State. A nice footprint in the state of North Carolina would be great for the Big 12. You're not going to get North Carolina, and don't pursue Wake Forest. Try to get NC State. Next team on the list, I would have Syracuse. Syracuse has great TV market potential. They registered as the largest fan base in the ACC, not counting Notre Dame. They just need to get better in football to attract more eyeballs. So they have great value potential. The next team I would go after if I were the Big 12 would be Georgia Tech. I think they're a decent enough brand that's a solid footprint in the state of Georgia that would open up some recruiting in the city of Atlanta. So I think Georgia Tech would be worth pursuing for the Big 12. And finally, Duke. Now, Duke is not a great brand in football, but they're an excellent brand in basketball. It would strengthen the Big 12 even more in basketball, and I would bring in Duke if you can grab NC State. Duke on its own, I'm not so sure. But if you can grab NC State, I would also try to grab Duke. Hopefully, the Big 12 has learned from just sitting back and doing nothing, because every time they've done that, they've gotten picked apart. If they do it again, guess what's going to happen, Big 12? You're going to get picked apart. So if the Big 12 was bluffing us and they have no intentions of getting any teams either out of the Pac-12 or the ACC, that's a bad move and they're going to get picked apart again. So the only thing that I can think of is they see what's going on with the ACC and they're playing a wait and see to see if they can get some teams out of the ACC. And if it falls through and the SEC and the Big Ten can't break those grant of rights, they can always fall back on the Pac-12 teams. But the Big 12 has got to start being more decisive, proactive, not being reactive. So y'all let me know in the comments section, number one, do you think the Big 12 was bluffing us? Or do you think that they see what's going on with the ACC as far as what the Big Ten and the SEC wants from the ACC, maybe be able to break the grant of rights, and then the Big 12 could grab some teams out of the ACC as well? Which one do you think is correct in this situation? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.